Talking about crowd pullers, there's one who we all know. There's not a lot you can draw inspiration from when it comes to Bollywood, but here's a man who I think defies all forms of innovation, and he, to me, is the role model that I'll pick from Bollywood when it comes to innovation. Amitabh Bachchan, with over 50 years of illustrious career, and we've seen him in many shapes and forms, right? From the angry young man to the romantic hero to the father to the TV anchor. And if his 50 years of illustrious career was not enough, very recently he came out to be a digital avatar tying up with Disney. A guy who does not need to reinvent himself, continues to reinvent himself, continues to defy logic, continues to reestablish himself. And he today, if not the best, is probably the top 3 highest brand equity earner in Bollywood. So to me, when it comes to innovation, it's all about disrupting yourself, driving that change, and no one comes closer, unparalleled to what Mr. Bachchan does. So if you look around us, whether it is the mobility or whether it is the various types of leisure and entertainment that we are accustomed to, whether it's music, books, videos, or our interactions socially, or whether it is our ability to be fit or our personalities, everywhere around us, so you see a horde of disruptions and innovations galore. And what we see essentially is that at the heart of all this is technology and AI. And there are a number of sessions that we'll see today and in the next couple of days, which will talk about the applications of AI. And this is essentially the arsenal that all organizations, whether they're big or small, have it for themselves. And you'll see numerous applications of blockchains, AI, AR, VR, NLP, conversational agents, and what have you. And it's applications which is changing the way the businesses operate, changing the way the business interacts with the consumers, and changing the way they're disrupting the ecosystem. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about, what is it that would enable the organization to leverage these capabilities to the fullest potential, right? And regardless of the sector that you're in, regardless of the size of the organization that you're in, you just cannot ignore and not adopt to the arsenal that is available, ahead of you. And there are numerous examples of organizations, that have actually embraced this, and the ones that have embraced the first are the ones that are sitting on a fairly large, valuation curve. And there are examples across, again, many sectors where these companies together command a valuation of over $1 trillion. Okay? But more importantly, which is the crux of what I would like to talk about today, is how do you drive transformation? And everything that you do, can be broken into a process. Even the aspect of bringing about innovation in an organization can be done in a very methodical, concerted manner, which is what I would like to touch upon. And essentially, the process that we follow, we call it FUEL, and it essentially has 4 key components. The first one is F, which is about the fabric. How do you weave the fabric of innovation? How do you create a culture of innovation? How do you create a DNA of innovation in the organization? Which is the first and the most important part of it. Part 2 of this is U, unravel. It's equally important that every single member of the organization understands what it takes, how would it, and what is the possibility for you and for us in order to get the most out of the innovation. The third, which is equally important, it's not only about the ideation. It's also equally important that you fire the engine, you provide the right infrastructure support that is required in order to get the ideation into execution, into reality. And the last is L, which is making it lean. Simple framework, fueling the engine, fueling the innovation, and we'll touch upon what each of these mean in a little bit more detail. The first one, which is fueling or creating the fabric. It's absolutely important that the organization now operate in an ambidextrous mode. Now, what I mean by an ambidextrous mode is there are organizations which do this very well, which is the left-hand side of the brain. They have very strong rigor, strong monitoring mechanism. They have a strong focus in terms of P&L. They have they have an ability of driving things to precision through control. They have scale. But equally important is what we can learn from the startup ecosystem. Equally important is organizations as large as ours, to have the nimbleness, to have the ability to do things with trial and error, to do things with speed, and be able to bring together the best of what is out there and run it with scale and speed. The second part, which is unraveling, right? When you have an idea with you, it is important that you activate your vision. Actually distill it down to what it would mean. If you have an idea, look at it, what it would look like 3 years from now. Lay out the different stepping stones, lay out the different components that are required in order to build that vision. Think about the news press release that will be sent out to your organization 2 years from now when that product is built, 2 years from now when that solution is going to be generated and will be implemented. Absolutely important to activate the vision, because it's that vision which will weave the DNA of your organization. It is that vision which will ensure that every single person of your team, regardless of the role that they perform, are able to anchor themselves to the grand vision. So not only is it important to get the idea germinated, but it's also important to show the big, bold vision to the organization. Equally important when you're relaying your vision to the organization is the reality check, which is the cross-industry benchmarking. It is important to know what is it that you would do and how best it is positioned vis-a-vis the market. And you're looking at the benchmarks, it's not only about your sector, it's not only important about your organization, but cross-industry benchmarking, taking the best of the breeds from the various sectors that you could look at. Let's look at the third one, which is firing the engine. Equally important is that when you have a vision, you don't let that vision die because of bureaucracy or because you don't have the necessary wherewithal in order to fire the engine. Whether it is the infrastructure that is required, whether it is the right set of people that is needed, whether it is the clouds and the machines and the tools that are needed, whether it is the data that is required or a sandbox that is required, all of that for an organization to be able to rapidly create the prototype so that the vision gets the necessary investment and the excitement amongst the larger people. Equally important is how do you build a disruptive and disruption-fit talent in order to do so. People are and people will continue to get consumed in the day-to-day jobs, but it's important to carve out, decouple some of those individuals who are only focused on building the prototype over the next 8 to 12 weeks, so that that particular vision or the ideation is able to see the final vision. The last, which is not the least, which is equally important, is how do you create a lean organization? And this is one of the areas where organizations struggle. Organizations today focus more as machines. There's hierarchies, there are silos, there are handoffs, which essentially add to the delay and impact and disrupt the speed and the agility that is required. It is important that organizations operate as organisms. Important that organizations talk to each other about and interact through roles, through responsibilities, anchored through a common vision, anchored through a common goal. Remove the set of boundaries and the boxes that are required that inhibit and cause the frictions, and create a structure which is fluid so that there is end-to-end accountability across the organization. So essentially, the fuel fabric, which is creating the fabric for innovation. Second, which is unraveling the threads. Third is firing the engine, creating a lean organization with the necessary wherewithal in order to create the prototype. And last is keep it lean. Now let's take a look at the examples from our world. The first and the foremost, creating innovation is actually a culture, right? It takes time. It takes almost a village to create this culture. And while it seems a bastardized terminology to create a culture, it again requires the same level of concerted effort anchored to the overall desire for the organization to drive it. So the first one, as I said earlier, is creating the DNA or creating and weaving the fabric of innovation. It starts with the culture of learning. Every single individual in the organization, if you're in the knowledge workshop, has to have the ability to learn and build upon their repertoire of knowledge. Second, which is equally important, is outside in view. I think there's a terminology that people normally talk about. If it's not built here, it's not world class. I think gone are the days where organizations can build things only on their own. It's absolutely critical for organizations to have an outside in view. Us as an organization at the Birla Group, we spend countless number of hours interacting with the knowledge partners and working and interacting with academia and startups to understand what's going on within the various sectors and different fields. This is the first step to drive innovation. Unless you understand what's going on outside, unless you understand that when it comes to speed, you've got to be as fast as Twitter. When it comes to intuition, you've got to be as good as Google. And unless you understand the new benchmarks that have been set by consumers, you will not be able to establish the same thing in your sectors. So the outside in view becomes absolutely critical. The second, which is unraveling the fabric, right? Have hackathons. One of the things that we do is Mindfire challenges every quarter. This is an internal hackathon. We look at a particular business problem, we look at a technique, and we look at an application-oriented hackathon. Now, this could be an application of computer vision, which is satellite imagery, to help improve demand forecasting, or it could be using NLP to have better interactions between humans and machines, or it could be various forms of deep learning modules to help improve quality in our manufacturing plants. And we take a particular topic and we have our entire organization split into 3 or 4 teams with the necessary support that is required through literature and external help. Absolutely important that the organization continues to learn from outside and from within itself. The second thing that we equally do well is interacting with large corporates. While the group, the Birla group in itself, has a legacy of 150 years and is into multiple sectors, one of the things that we've learned is what we can do with large corporations, whether it is with Bosch or with Microsoft or with Amazon. Perhaps this is the only organization where Microsoft and Amazon are both welcome at one go. And other organizations, where we work with a lot of software partners like Oracle and SAP, where again, we're looking at various use cases and opportunities where we can bring in, integrate some of these things into our DNA and help drive speed and innovation. The third part, which is firing the engine. One of the things that we've done is created a lab, and this lab essentially is our so-called garage, which has the necessary toolkits and the infrastructure which is required for the organization to build the prototypes. So when we have an idea and these ideas are reviewed and vetted during the internal hackathons, the winning idea, which is the idea which wins amongst the nominations, is the one which is given the option to build a prototype using this lab. And this lab has got everything that you want for it. It's like you're a kid in a candy store with Raspberry Pis and GPU boxes, all the sandboxes and the training data set that is required. And you get 8 to 12 weeks essentially to build your prototype and bring it to fruition. The next thing that we do is, as a part of the idea, in order to get speed and in order to get execution rigor, we identify the startups that we can work with. In some cases, we integrate a particular solution that a startup already has, or in some cases, we co-innovate with the startup. Again, you look at an idea, you run an hackathon, you identify the winning idea, you give them the engine, which is essentially the infrastructure in order to create the prototype, and you connect them with the right set of people, whether it is in academia or with the startups, in order to bring that particular prototype into fruition. And the last thing is structure the organization in a lean manner. So the way we structure our team, we structure it as a bamboo, which is a very strong foundational layers, which has the people that have the necessary domain skills, have the data engineering skills, the data science skills, and these are the people that are tagged to every single prototype that we're building. And then you have the idea generator, which is the core team which is generating the idea. And every time a particular idea has to be prototyped, you have this lean team which gets attached to them so that they're able to build this prototype in a span of 8 to 12 weeks. And most importantly, as a part of the lean thing is start small. You may have zillions of ideas when it comes to computer vision. You may have zillions of ideas when it comes to NLP. Look at one particular area, one application, start small, do it end to end. Once you're able to do it successfully, then you look at scaling it up. And over the course of the last 2 years, the team, our organization has successfully deployed a number of these ideas. And every single time we have taken up an idea, we've looked at one particular plant, one particular brand, one region, one city. And only once we are able to execute it end to end, we look at scaling it up. Okay? So to end, while it takes a lot of things in order to make the perfect rhapsody or a perfect symphony, it starts small, which is the fabric that you have to weave. Second is unravel the fabric with the outside in view and the infrastructure that you want to offer. Third is fire the engine, and last is keep it lean. Thanks.